Hey, it's Tim. It's just for the U.S. Open, and we're seeing markets that are a bit higher. M&A activity around the world. We'll talk in a second about it. First promo for tonight, Trading the Globe, 7:30 p.m. CNBC. This is going to be exactly why you want to invest in emerging markets. We're going to hit the high notes, but we're going to give you some detail on the best places to invest. So stay tuned. First of 4 shows this fall. As we look at markets, the BHP-POT deal is very much emblematic for the whole EM space. This is about population growth. This is about demand for food. This is not about near-term pricing. And if you look where potash is priced at around $360 or so a ton, this is a very value accretive deal at these prices to BHP. They're not going to get the company at these prices, so expect more of a bidding war. Expect more of the rest of the sector to come into fray. And remember, the mining sector ultimately is what's going to eat up this fertilizer sector. I mean, the big integrated miners, Rio Tinto, Vale, BHP, these guys all have grand ambitions. Vale's probably going to grow this more organically, whereas BHP has to buy Rio Tinto. Then, do they take on more debt? Well, I think the company ultimately, which less than 2 years ago had over $35 billion of debt, is going to be a little more cautious about strapping onto the balance sheet at this point. But that's definitely the key. Ultimately, whatever happens in the U.S. housing market is going to have another big impact on the rest of the materials trade, and we've got a number of housing numbers coming out today, and I think the derivative or the lateral move on this is to what extent are some of the building materials names like a Cemex, like a Holcim, like a Lafarge in the cement space, pulp and paper, Fibria, FBR in Brazil, biggest player in the world. To what extent is there really a bid that can return a couple of these stocks? I think in the case of Cemex, you've got a company that's been very beat up based upon a terrible balance sheet that needs to improve. But these prices, stock looks pretty interesting. Overall, it's still a bit of a range trade. It's still a bit of a macro trade. Dollar yen at historic lows. So the Bank of Japan has to do something on intervention. Ultimately, it's really about the trade that does continue to see the dollar weaken against its major crosses, but ultimately weaken against the FX kingpins, so to speak, of the emerging world. That'd be the Brazilian real. The Chinese yuan is while trading in its own little orbit, is ultimately something that will appreciate on its own against the dollar. But as we start to address some of these bigger thematic moves, the Indian rupee, the Brazil real, the Chilean peso, even the Mexican peso are all places you can get pretty excited on the FX trade. See you tonight.